Winter in Philadelphia, the fateful beginning. Philadelphia in December always had a certain sharpness in the air. Crisp, icy winds, slipping through the old maples lining our block, and the city lights glittering like frosted jewels. I remember watching the first snowflakes fall that year from my kitchen window, while the hum of the heater and the aroma of cinnamon rolls filled our suburban home. At 39, I, Susan Harris, felt my life had finally reached a gentle balance. My days revolved around my husband, Greg, a financial consultant with a charming smile, and our two lively kids, Olivia and Ben. Laughter and the shuffle of little feet had long replaced the silent anxieties of my 20s. Yet, all was not as tranquil as it seemed. The comfort I took in routine, waking early, prepping pancakes, and volunteering at the local library, often kept my mind from wandering into darker places. Only during winter, when nights stretched endlessly and the city seemed wrapped in secrets, did I catch myself worrying. Greg worked late more than ever, and I chalked it up to holiday deadlines or market volatility, never wanting to admit the faint shadows I saw under his eyes, or the edge in his voice. That winter, Dad and Mom, Robert and Patricia Collins, invited us to their lakeside cabin for Christmas. The place was a family refuge, its wood-paneled walls holding echoes of childhood snowball fights and homemade cocoa. Packing up the car, I remember thinking how lucky my kids were to have grandparents that adored them, and a husband who, on the surface, seemed as invested in family traditions as I was. But when we arrived, something felt off. Dad's handshake lingered, full of worry. Mom hugged me a little too tightly, her voice wavering with unspoken concern. A storm was settling over the city, but as it turned out, the real storm was brewing within my own home. And I was still blissfully unaware, shivering more from a sense of foreboding than the December chill outside. Unsettling signs from the old family home. The winter break had barely begun when my world started tilting in ways I never expected. One icy Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. Her voice, usually steady as a metronome, trembled on the other end of the line. "Susan, there's something wrong at the lake house," she whispered, barely louder than the hiss of static. I got in the car, heart pounding as I hit the familiar road toward my parents' old cedar cabin tucked by Willow Lake. When I arrived, fresh snow muffled every sound, but the restless wind, and the place looked frozen in time. But it didn't take long for my nerves to ignite. The front gate stood crooked, swinging open on its hinges. I noticed muddy footprints, dusted with snow, trailing up the porch, the back door slightly ajar. Inside, the air hung thick with a burnt odor that set off memories I didn't want to recall. My father, Robert, was pacing the worn wooden floor while Mom clung to a mug of now-cold coffee, her eyes darting anxiously. They led me through the chaos, utility bills missing from their usual kitchen drawer, a blackened patch on the windowsill where a candle had apparently flared, scorch marks stretching along the edge of the curtains. It didn't add up. My parents were creatures of habit, meticulous, careful, almost stubbornly responsible. They never left candles burning unattended, and they certainly didn't misplace important documents. The neighbors hadn't noticed any strangers, yet the upstairs guest room window showed clear prying marks along the frame. Dad mentioned the smoke alarm had failed to go off, despite his regular battery checks. As I wandered the creaking halls of my childhood, goosebumps shivered their way up my arms, not from the cold, but from the gnawing sense that someone had invaded our refuge. Each new detail compounded my unease. The faded footprints, the tampered locks, the odd shimmer of broken glass beneath the rug. I tried to push away suspicion, but deep down, I sensed this was no ordinary mishap. My instincts were screaming that someone meant us harm and that the worst was yet to come. Linda's solitary investigation. It's hard to describe what happens when suspicion roots itself in your chest. At first, it's just a flicker. Maybe you notice your husband fidgeting during phone calls. Maybe you sense a tone shift, a lie so small it almost slips by. That winter, I couldn't ignore those flickers anymore. The events at my parents' farmhouse gnawed at me. The forced window, the missing documents, the way Michael swept past my questions with practiced ease. Alone in the house late at night, I felt like I was living inside a puzzle with one obvious piece missing. My investigation started privately, more an act of survival than sleuthing. I bought a small, discreet voice recorder and began leaving it nearby when Michael talked with his friend Derek. I scoured our finances, scrutinizing any anomalies. A $4,000 transfer I didn't recall authorizing, insurance inquiries, Michael's overly detailed stories about work emergencies. I brushed my teeth with the bathroom door locked, afraid I might let my doubts slip out loud. Each chance I got, I pored over Michael's desk, memorizing files, scanning emails. I even started lingering in the garage after he got home, sniffing for smoke or gasoline, terrified to think what I might find if I followed the scent. One evening, I resorted to recruiting outside help. My old college classmate, Janice, had joined the Harrisburg police several years back. Embarrassed but desperate, I met her for coffee and described my suspicions in halting whispers. Janice listened, never promising sweeping police action, but offering practical advice. Document everything. Email yourself backups. If he's hiding something, it leaves a trail. Following her counsel, I became my own evidence technician, snapping photos of footprints in the snow by my parents' home, logging the dates and times of household disruptions, copying down serial numbers from missing items. Janice pulled a few strings and discreetly checked area crime databases. No random burglaries, she reported. If this was the work of a stranger, the pattern was invisible. The more I uncovered, the sicker I felt. Michael's stories unraveled with the lightest tug. There was the supposed business trip where his credit card pinged at a gas station near my parents' home. The late-night runs to the office that lined up perfectly with the break-in timeline. The way he shut down at the mention of insurance paperwork. I covertly installed a security camera in our garage, then watched the cloud feeds at 3 a.m. on the nights I couldn't sleep. One recording made my stomach freefall. Michael, moving with determined focus, stashing a singed manila envelope, the one containing my parents' property deeds, in a box marked seasonal decorations. But doubt is exhausting. Some days, I almost convinced myself I was wrong, that stress was twisting reality. I baked more cookies. I hugged my children tighter, fighting the looming dread that their world, too, was built on rotten foundations. At book club or PTA meetings, I smiled and nodded, suppressing the urge to whisper my family's unraveling to anyone who would listen. Still, the evidence snowballed. Michael's phone calls grew secretive. I caught him burning papers in our backyard fire pit on a night that was far too cold for s'mores. His friend Derek seemed to avoid my eyes whenever he visited, answering my greetings with clipped politeness. Every time I opened our home insurance app, new notifications pinged. Policy changes, mysterious beneficiaries, over-the-limit claims. I knew then that hiding was pointless, and that silence would only let the truth rot. In the calm of my kitchen, coffee brewing, kids at school, I laid out every document, every audio file, every photo I'd collected. I emailed Janice, and told her the time had come. The betrayal was stunning, but clarity gave me strength. If I couldn't trust my husband, I could trust myself and the evidence that love had blinded me to her for far too long. This lonely investigation would end in confrontation. But as I zipped the evidence folder closed, I realized I was no longer afraid. The woman who had started this winter, trapped by self-doubt, was gone, replaced by someone fierce and unbreakable. No more secrets behind closed doors. Not in my family, not ever again. The perfect trap. Linda's meticulous investigation finally pieced together a clear and damning timeline. She had stacks of evidence. The bank transfer Ethan couldn't explain, digital records of him at the lake house on nights he supposedly worked overtime, and video proof of him handling her parents' missing deed. But now, she knew she needed more than facts. She needed a confession. After an evening reviewing her files, Linda recruited Julia's help, not just as a friend, but as a police officer willing to support a sting operation discreetly. Together, they mapped out a plan that would give Ethan every chance to exonerate or incriminate himself. The stakes were monumental. If he caught wind of the setup, he could destroy the last of the evidence and disappear. But if they moved too slowly, Linda's parents would forever be victims of both theft and betrayal. They decided on a confrontation, staged under the guise of an ordinary Saturday night family dinner. Julia and a small team of plainclothes officers would wait in a car down the block, radio at the ready. Linda, heart racing, prepared the dining room table with the appearance of complete normalcy. She laid out pot roast, cornbread, salad bowls, her girls blissfully chattering and unaware of the shadows hovering just outside their suburban home. Ethan arrived late, blaming a traffic jam that Linda already knew didn't exist. He planted a kiss on her cheek, glancing over his shoulder far too often for a man with nothing to hide. Over dinner, Linda played her role perfectly, listening, laughing, baiting Ethan with casual questions about work, about the aging smoke alarm at the lake house, about insurance paperwork he'd taken an interest in recently. The tension between them was almost imperceptible, but Julia, listening over the wire worn under Linda's sweater, could hear every tremble in Linda's voice. After the girls went to bed, Linda presented Ethan with a folder of household bills she needed help sorting. Inside, however, were color copies of the missing deed, bank statements, and photographs of the burned curtain. Ethan leafed through them, his facade cracking when he came to a screenshot from the security camera. "What is this?" he stammered. Linda met his eyes and, with quiet strength, pressed play on a voice recording. Ethan's voice, angry, frustrated, discussing getting rid of paperwork with Dan, filled the kitchen air. For a full minute, the silence stretched, only the tick of the old wall clock marking time. "Ethan, please," Linda said. "Just tell me the truth. We can end this tonight." Ethan stared, desperate. Instead of denial, rage flared in his eyes. He shoved the papers off the table, shouting about betrayal. But Linda didn't flinch. She gave the agreed-upon signal, a single sharp tone, pressing the garage door opener twice. Within moments, Julia and her team entered through the back, badges out. Ethan realized, too late, exactly how skillfully Linda had set the trap. Julia read him his rights as Linda, numb yet unbroken, watched the man she thought she knew being handcuffed in their kitchen. "You did the right thing," Julia whispered. Linda nodded, tears streaking silently as she looked at the photographs, the recordings, the fragments of a marriage that could never be salvaged. But in the center of that heartbreak, a cold, unspeakable relief bloomed. Linda's perfect trap had closed at last, not merely saving her parents' future, but reclaiming her own sense of truth. Outside, the Philadelphia winter pressed soft and silent against the glass. An old world ended, but in the hush, a stronger one waited to begin. The showdown, the silence that followed Ethan's arrest was heavy, a brutal contrast to the chaos he'd just unleashed in our kitchen. My hands were shaking as the officers led him out into the frigid night, red and blue lights flickering across the faces of my bewildered twins peering from the staircase. I wanted to rush to them, but my knees nearly buckled beneath the weight of the choice I'd made. This was the moment I'd agonized over for weeks. The collision of private pain and public consequence. The undoing of the very life I'd fought to protect. Ethan's voice echoed down the hall, alternately pleading and furious. "Linda, how could you? This is a setup. You have no idea what you're doing." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, refusing to answer, refusing to let his anger cloud the clarity I'd earned. Janice stayed by my side, while her partner cuffed Ethan and read him his rights again. She spoke low and steady in my ear. "You just did the hardest thing, Linda. You saved your parents. You saved yourself." I nodded numbly, tears carving icy tracks down my cheeks. Beyond the window, the city held its breath beneath a blanket of snow, utterly indifferent to the way my world was breaking open. Even after the police cars rolled away, their tires crunching on salted stone, the confrontation lingered in every room. I made my way upstairs to find Max and Chloe huddled on my bed, wide-eyed and silent. They didn't ask questions right away. Children can sense when the answers are too big, too heavy. I crawled in between them, pulling them close. Their warmth was the only certainty left in a night filled with shadows. The hours that followed were a whirlwind. Statements at the police station, hurried calls to my parents, letting them know Ethan had been caught. My mother wept on the line, her gratitude mixing with old grief. "Linda, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you," she whispered. I couldn't summon anger at her or Ethan. Not yet. There was only exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness sharpened by the raw edges of relief. Sleep was impossible. I stood in the twins' doorway as they finally drifted off, watching the gentle rise and fall of their breathing. That room, that night, there was no triumph, only the grim certainty that what had been broken would take a long time to mend. Quietly, I folded the evidence, the photos, the copied files, the battered envelope, and tucked them away in a shoebox high on a closet shelf. Proof of what I had refused to see, now sealed and silent. In the hush after the confrontation, I promised I would do everything in my power to build something honest for my children, to let our story from this point on be one of truth, not fear. The truth comes to light when the front door finally slammed shut behind Ethan as the officers took him away. A bone-deep silence settled in the house. The echoes of raised voices, the flash of anger in his eyes, and the cold, professional movements of the police still rattled around my mind. I could feel my breath hitch in my chest, like I'd run a marathon, like I'd been holding my breath for years and only now dared let it go. The truth was finally, undeniably, out in the open. That phrase, "the truth will set you free," never felt so sharp or so complicated. Afterward, the police spent hours going over everything. They photographed evidence, cataloged the paperwork I had collected, and even asked to review old emails, phone records, and the contents of Ethan's locked desk drawer. Sitting beside Julia, her hand steady on my shoulder, I watched as the last of my illusions was carefully dismantled by professionals who'd seen this kind of pain hundreds of times before. It was methodical, almost routine for them. But for me, Every click of a camera shutter and every murmur of police voices marked another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I knew. Ethan's betrayal wasn't just about the financial crimes, though they were bad enough, with their tangles of forged documents, hidden transactions, insurance scams, and attempts to shift property rights. It wasn't even about the lies he told to cover his tracks. It was the deep, hollow ache of realizing that someone I had loved had over time chosen greed, resentment, or maybe just desperation over our family. I wanted to scream, to hurl plates or cry until the sun rose,
It's all right, you're safe
but
now.
I simply sat there,
Just breathe.
staring at the kitchen tiles as officers spoke in low, careful tones around me. Once they left, the house felt both violated and oddly purified, as if every shadowy secret had been forced into daylight. I wandered into the twins' room, stroking their hair as they finally slept, exhausted by the emotional storm. The next morning, their questions came fast and furious. Where's Dad? Why were there police? Did we do something wrong? How do you compress adult heartbreak into an explanation a child can understand? Kneeling beside their beds, I did my best. Daddy made some choices that hurt people. The police need to talk to him about it. But none of this is your fault. I love you both, and we're safe now. The words sounded thin, paper shields against a world suddenly much more unpredictable. But I meant them with every fiber of my being. In the days that followed, as the truth continued to unravel, I faced a parade of realities I'd always feared. My parents had to revisit old traumas as police questioned them about the night of the break-in, about the missing papers, the scorched windowsill, and Ethan's suspicious visits. My mother, shaky but brave, recounted, "I didn't want to believe it was someone we knew, but I'm proud of you for seeing it through." The relief in my father's eyes was mixed with sadness, both for the lost trust and the tangible risk we'd all been under. If just for a moment, news of Ethan's arrest spread fast in our tight-knit suburb. By the end of the week, neighbors dropped by under the guise of sharing casseroles or checking in, but I could tell by the careful way they avoided details that the story had already grown its own legs. Some offered sympathy, others let drop the kinds of questions that sting. Were there really signs? Did you ever suspect? What will you do now? I tried not to let the gossip chip away at my fragile sense of stability. Instead, I focused on transparency with my kids and my parents, and reached out to Julia and Janice for advice on what to do next. My lawyer handled the paperwork for protective orders and explained how Ethan's assets would be frozen during the investigation. I leaned on my friends and sister for support. Every day, I repeated a new mantra. The truth is out now. We'll rebuild, no matter how long it takes. Sometimes, during sleepless midnight hours, shame or regret crept in. Could I have stopped this sooner? Should I have trusted my gut in those early months when the bills vanished and Ethan jumped at every unexpected phone call? But then, I'd remember the courage it took to refuse denial, to gather evidence, to face the ugly reality and bring it to light. That courage gave me purpose. I realized that confronting the truth had not only protected my family from further harm, but had also freed us from a future built on sand. That week, I finally allowed myself to grieve, not just the marriage, but the future I thought we'd have. I packed up Ethan's few remaining belongings, unsure when or if he'd be able to explain himself. Letters from the district attorney and victim's advocate let me know the process would be long. Interviews, court dates, perhaps even ugly cross-examinations. But through it all, surrounded by my parents and holding my kids close, I felt lighter. We had lost our innocence, yes, but not our integrity. The truth came at a cost. It shattered the illusion of safety, forced me to confront my own blindness, and exposed my children to realities I longed to shield them from. Yet, as I watched the sun rise through our frost-glazed window, I saw possibility too. The air in the house had changed. No more secrets whispering behind closed doors. No more dread of what tomorrow would bring. Above all, I decided that the truth, however hard won, would be the strong foundation on which we would build whatever came next. Our old life was gone, but as my daughter told me, "Mom, we can start a new story now." In that moment, I believed her, and for the first time since winter began, I let hope back in, the journey of healing. After the storm of revelations and heartbreak, I found myself staring at the shattered pieces of what used to be my life, wondering where to even begin. The pain from betrayal doesn't just fade away with the passing of time. Some days, it clings to you like a second skin. My children's questions punctuated each morning with a new ache. Little voices asking, "Will Dad come home?" Or, "Are we still a family?" How do you explain to kids that rebuilding sometimes means starting from scratch? My first step was honesty, but with compassion tailored to their world. I kept the language simple, never involving them in messy adult details, and focused on reassurance. "We're safe now. I'm here for you. We'll get through this together." It amazed me how resilient children can be, how laughter still bubbled up among their play, even if shadows hovered in the corners. Even more difficult was facing the stares and whispers of the community. Once word spread about Ethan's arrest and my role in exposing the truth, I felt caught between pity and suspicion. At the supermarket, neighbors smiled kindly, but shifted quickly down the aisle. At school pickup, some parents leaned in for secrets, others averted their gaze. I reminded myself this was only a chapter, a hard chapter, yes, but not the entirety of our story. Therapy became a lifeline. I found a counselor who specialized in trauma and betrayal, someone who didn't rush me to move on, but instead helped me sit with my pain, name it, and gradually loosen its grip. I worked to unravel the internalized guilt I carried. The "should I have seen it sooner?" and the "did I do enough?" I brought my children with me some weeks, giving them a safe place to express their fears and confusion, and teaching them that it's okay to talk about hard things. My parents, though wounded by what happened in their own home, rallied around me in ways that surprised even themselves. My mother started coming by every Saturday with a casserole and an offer. Sometimes a gentle shoulder, other times a stern warning not to wallow too deep in regret. My father organized weekend trips to the lakeside cabin, reclaiming it as a haven by inviting joy and new memories inside its walls, repainting the porch together, or watching the kids build snow forts on the shore. We began to erase the scars that Ethan's actions had left behind. Financially, the road to stability was just as hard as the emotional journey. Lawsuits, frozen assets, and meetings with stern lawyers became my new normal. I returned to part-time work at the library, letting the rhythm of shelving books and recommending novels provide a kind of therapy all its own. The local librarian, an old friend, never pried, just offered a knowing look when things got overwhelming, and let me be Susan, not the woman whose husband. There were setbacks. Of course there were. Nights when the loneliness was as palpable as the winter cold, when my own bed seemed cavernous and unfamiliar. There were moments I doubted every decision, worried that the trauma of the past would echo through my children's futures. But there were also moments of fierce pride, watching Olivia stand up for a classmate at recess, Or Ben learning to ride his bike down our new block, face flushed with victory and wind. I realized healing wasn't linear. Some days were a step forward, others a slide back, but always, always a movement toward hope. Faith, in whatever form it took, became a quiet companion. I spent a little more time on Sunday mornings, in the back pew of the local church, not seeking answers, but strength. The hymns and kind words from strangers weren't a cure, but they were a balm. I was reminded gently that it's possible to forgive, not just Ethan, but myself. That forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but letting go of the tight fist of anger, loosening its hold one finger at a time. Slowly, my circle, once shattered, began to knit itself together anew. Friends who heard the truth reached out, some with casseroles, others just with presence. I built boundaries where I needed them and accepted help without shame. Life found its way back into old routines, movie nights with the kids, Sunday walks through the frosted park, the yearly ritual of decorating the Christmas tree. This time, with only joy, no shadows looking in from the porch. By the anniversary of that terrible winter, I could breathe more freely. The pain, though still there, had softened. A scar, not a wound. I knew the journey wasn't done. Healing, after all, is never about erasing the past, but transforming it. My home, once a place of hidden fears, became one of radical honesty. Secrets had no more power here, only truth, no matter how hard won. Looking back, the ordeal forced me to find, within myself, a reserve of strength I'd never known. I became a living example for my children, not of victimhood, but of possibility, of what it looks like to break, mend, and emerge, not the same, but stronger, kinder, more awake to the fragile blessings of ordinary days. So the story did not end on the night Ethan was led away in handcuffs, nor at any point when the hearings were over or the last bill was paid. Instead, it kept going, through laughter, new friendships, honest tears, and the promise that love, the real kind, rooted in truth, could still flourish amid the ruins. That's the real legacy I want to leave my children. Not a life free of pain, but the knowledge that, no matter what comes, we could choose courage and hope. In that morning sunlight, with cinnamon rolls, baking, and little feet racing for the door, I finally felt it, a sense that we were, after all, healing